Hello and welcome to episode 69 of New Hampshire Knits, a knitting podcast coming to you from the gorgeous state of New Hampshire, where our state motto is knit free or die. I'm recording this episode on Sunday, November 19th. This episode is sponsored by the woollythistle.com. The Woolly Thistle brings the best of British yarns to us here in the United States and Canada. The Woolly Thistle will be having a huge sale on November 25th, commonly known as Cyber Saturday. I like to think of it more as Small Business Saturday. It's the Saturday right after Thanksgiving, and I will be slashing prices left, right and centre all over the place wherever I can. So be sure to mark your calendars and come visit the Woolly Thistle on Saturday, November 25th. Let the Woolly Thistle do the international shipping so you don't have to. Hello everyone, this is your host Claire, and I hope that you are ready to enjoy another episode of what's been going on here at the Woolly Thistle and at New Hampshire Knits. I hope you're well out there. Did you enjoy hearing from Oliver Henry in episode 68? Oliver Henry is the grader for Jamieson and Smith, and we met him when we stopped in at the shop while we were in Shetland back in August. I did not expect to meet him, but I was delighted that we did, and I brought that chat to you in the last episode. So if you haven't had a listen, please go have a listen. He is great. He's got one of the best voices ever. Not only does he have a very strong Shetland accent, but he's got this gravelly voice. So it's a good listen. As many of you know, we lost power a couple of weeks ago now for a whole 7 days. It was miserable. The worst part about it was not having water. So we were having to bring in buckets of water to do anything. But we were able to keep the house warm with our wood stove, and we were able to, priorities, we were able to rig up internet on the little generator we have for the fridge freezer. So all in all, we were able to get by quite well. Unfortunately, though, the podcast took a hit. I had recorded an episode on the Sunday, and we woke up on Monday to no power. My plan had been to edit it on Monday. So what follows here is a bit of a mashup between the pre-recorded episode, the bits that are still relevant, and a newly recorded episode that I did this weekend. If it gets a little out of sync, that's why. I've done my best, and I think it's okay for the most part. All right, enjoy the show. Today I'll be talking about Rhinebeck. It was a wonderful weekend. The weather was hot. It was too hot to wear my finished object, sadly. And I think I really noticed that there was a lack of, or at least a reduction in the wearing of Rhinebeck sweaters, which was a shame because it's always really nice to look out at the millions of people and see them all in wool. But there were still millions of people there, and there were still a lot of Rhinebeck sweaters being worn, those good souls that braved the heat. But I think a lot of folks were just like me and stripped off. So let's get started, shall we? This episode includes On the Needles, Off the Needles, a Rhinebeck recap, a Woolly Thistle update, and then we'll wrap it up. I'm trying to keep this episode nice and short for you, but still full of stuff you want to hear. So On the Needles, right now I have a tiny little project going, and it's the Peary Fleurs hat in Jamieson and Smith 2-ply. This is the third time I've knit this hat. I knit it originally when it first came out, I think, or thereabouts, and the original yarn that it called for was Rowan felted tweed, but in a fingering weight, so I don't think it was their felted tweed, but it was a Rowan yarn, a lovely yarn, but they discontinued it. So Kate Davis rewrote the pattern for Jamieson and Smith 2-ply. And I see people buying the yarn for this all the time. And I thought, well, it might be nice to do a nice wee kit. So I'm working on that right now, and I hope that it will be a very special addition to the shop. So I'm knitting that for the shop just as a shop sample, but I never get bored of this pattern. 3 times I've knit it and it goes really fast. I'm already finished the second row of little flowers. It's called Peary Flowers because that means little flowers in Shetland. And I think I just have another repeat, which is 2 more sets of flowers, and then the decreases, and it's done. It uses about 7 different colors, if I remember, and but of course you're only using 2 at any one time, and it's a quick and fun knit. I don't think it's difficult. I think anyone could tackle it, so it's a good first project for new colourwork knitters. You get to do a bit of corrugated ribbing, and of course you get to make really pretty flowers. It's thoroughly enjoyable. Also on the needles right now, I have a pair of socks. I cast on a pair of vanilla socks using West Yorkshire Spinners candy cane yarn. This is their holiday striped yarn with bright red and bright green, both very Christmassy shades of those colours, in stripes with a cream in between. I ordered loads of it, so I knew I could have a ball for myself. And I started knitting, and I'm doing 64 stitches cuff down on a US 1.5, and oh my goodness, it is so potato chippy. Just one more stripe, just one more stripe. Each stripe is maybe 3 or 4 rows around. Yes, 3 or 4 rows long, so it's no time before you're changing stripes again. And I'm just doing an afterthought heel so that I can keep the stripes going. And I finished one sock, and I've already put in the afterthought heel thread for the second sock. You can literally knit a sock of this in a day, I'm convinced. I almost finished the first sock in just over a day, and that wasn't even going at it that hard. It's just so potato chippy. So those are on. My lovely daughter, who is growing and growing, she's going to be 12 next month, tried the sock on, and to my amazement and horror, both at the same time, they fit her. Her feet are already bigger than mine, I think. So I was knitting them for me, but maybe she'll get them to wear on Christmas morning. And also one sock, I knit the first sock used just under 1/4 of a ball. Now I don't knit my cuffs super long or anything, but they're not super short either. And so I'm going to get two socks, one whole pair of socks in less than half a ball, which means I can also knit my son some as well. So I think that's going to happen. The other thing I cast on after buying the yarn at Rhinebeck is my Tidal Yarns sweater, and I just cast this on right before I went off on my little retreat that I'll tell you about, and I knit. I really got a good chunk of starting that at the retreat. This is Tidal Yarns, which is she's from Connecticut, and she creates her own yarn using local flocks, and then she naturally dyes them at her home studio. She doesn't sell online, and it's not for the want of my trying, but she does do a lot of the festivals, and so I see her at New Hampshire, Vermont, and I think Rhinebeck. This was her first year, so I hope you had a good year, Patricia, if you're listening. And I really love it. I got sort of mustardy yellow, Grello mustardy kind of color. I love it. It's going to be great. And I'm knitting one of her very simple raglan sweaters in it, which is a nice baggy throw over a shirt kind of sweater with jeans. This is my third garment I've knit using Tidal Yarns, and each one I've used one of her patterns because they're just lovely. This is a fingering weight yarn too, so it's a sweater in fingering weight, which is just so comfortable to wear, not bulky at all, and a nice layering piece. So I know I'll zoom through that. I've done all the raglan shaping, and I've put the arms on waist yarn now. This is a top down. So now I'm just going round and round in the body, and I have about another 9 inches of that or something to do. I'm going to make it a little bit longer than the pattern. Yeah, so I'm really excited about that. It's a great thing to be knitting on when my mind is thinking about other things, such as what I am fantasy knitting right now. This has come as a result of the retreat I was just on. Emily of Fibertown had knit the Lovage sweater, and I remember seeing it on her podcast, and it's really beautiful. I had also seen the pattern myself and had put it in my favorites, but I felt like it was too much for me to knit, or not that it was too hard or anything, but just it was a lot of Fair Isle, and I wasn't sure that I wanted to deal with that. However, Emily was wearing it at the retreat, and I literally, well, I was drooling on this retreat, which I'll tell you about too later, but I just could not get over the beauty of this sweater. Emily has done such a great job. Her colors are very muted, very soft. I don't know. I fell in love with it. So that is what I'm going to be casting on next. My fantasy knitting is going to become a reality. So right now I have decided that I'll knit it using Jamieson and Smith. I'm going to use Jamieson and Smith Supreme for the body. I'm not sure of the color yet. The Supreme range is all Shetland colors, so like Mugat and Euglet and things like that. Can't remember exactly what the color is that I want. And in the meantime, I'm also just playing with lovely muted shades for the yoke. The Lovage sweater, if you're not familiar, is a yoked sweater, but the yoke goes all the way down to the upper part of your arm, just above your elbow. So you're actually doing color work on the sleeves, the body, and then you join it all together and knit it in the round as your shoulder yoke. And I keep thinking about all the colors. This is a Marie Wallen pattern, and of course you all know Marie Wallen's latest book, Shetland, where she has lots of beautiful Fair Isle color work. Marie Wallen really does have a unique aesthetic. I think her colors choices are just beautiful, very muted but colorful at the same time. And so I want to try and emulate this in her Lovage sweater. So while I've been percolating that, I've been knitting on my very vanilla sweater and getting a good go on that. That will become my car project. I keep going out without my knitting. The shame of it, I know. So I think the sweater can live in my car and just be knit on when I'm out and about. But the Lovage is going to be cast on real soon as I have all the yarn that I need to get started. Off the needles, well, I did finish my vest that I was knitting in Berlin Yarns DK Petey Brown, and I'm really chuffed with how this came out. I need to have Jay take some pictures of me wearing it. That and my Glenfiddich cardigan as well, which is all finished. Can't remember if I've told you the latest about that, so I'll circle back to that. But the Petey Brown is a lovely, rich, dark, bitter chocolate color. And I'm calling it my Berneret vest because that is where these Hebridean sheep live with Meg of Berlin Yarn. And this was a pattern for a sweater by Sarah Hatton of Rowan, and the sweater is called Carla with a K. And I changed it to be a vest and a V-neck, whereas it had a round neck before. It's knit in pieces, and I modified it using the numbers from Anne Budd's handy book of top down sweaters, but I was knitting this bottom up, so I had to reverse everything, and that was a new experience, but completely doable. I talked a lot about this in the last episode, so if you're interested about how I changed it up and how I sewed it together, and that was my first attempt at sewing in pieces. It did make it feel like it was going much quicker because it was just pieces instead of a whole garment on the needles at any one time. Anyway, suffice to say it's finished. I'm thrilled with it. I blocked it, and I had to block it about 5 days before Rhinebeck because I knew it was going to take a long time to dry, and it did take 4 or 5 days. I would put it outside, I'd flip it over again, and just keep letting the air get at it. It's the Hebridean wool, there's a lot of it in this vest. Even without sleeves, I think I used 5 100-gram balls, and that's because of all the cables, and also because It's quite generously sized. I will never get sizing right, it would seem. So we, well, it fits me, and the cables sort of suck in the shaping around my waist nicely. It's very stretchy. So we had Jay try it on, and while it was a little short above his tummy button, and it was a little high around his neck, it fit him around his circumference. And he's a big guy. So, yeah, lots to say about cable stitches and this Hebridean yarn. Knit one and it fits the whole family. So, I'm really happy with. While I am not sensitive really to wool at all, I did find that I wanted to wear a thicker t-shirt under it. There was a tiny bit of prickle factor with a thin t-shirt under it. So I did wear a thicker one and it was absolutely fine. I wore it all day, felt lovely and warm. But because it was a vest, I still had breathing space. Yeah, I think it's a favorite. It's going to go great with jeans. I think it looked really cute with a little tartan skirt and tights and boots. Yeah, I'm really, really happy with it. I'm happy with the yarn. I'm happy that I was able to change a design significantly. I've not done that really before. Oh, let me talk about the Glenfiddich cardigan. Not to bore you with this again, because I know I've talked about it a lot. But when I finished it, I cast off the button band, and I found that when I was wearing it, it was pulling the front. It was pulling the fronts up, so it kind of looked like it was scooping up along the bottom, and that's not the way it was supposed to be. Also, it was really bugging me around my neck. I was going to rip the whole button band out, and there's quite a few rows in the button band, so that would have been quite a task. I was going to do all that, but before I did, my knitting ladies, my knit night group, were here, and I asked them what they thought, and they thought maybe the cast off was just too tight. So I thought, well, it's worth just trying to rip out the cast off row and refinishing it. And what I did was the surprisingly stretchy bind off, Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off. And do you know, it made all the difference. It no longer pulls up in the front at the bottom, and my neck is completely comfortable. No problem at all. I knitted this out of Blacker Yarns Classic DK, which is sort of, I love this yarn because I think it's just a very sturdy, utilitarian yarn in lots of pretty colors. It's not the softest yarn, but it does have 35% BFL in it. So it's not a harsh yarn at all. It's a very round yarn in structure, so it's great for cables, and my cables are popping right off. I'm wearing it now actually, and I'm very comfortable in it. The only thing left to do with this is buttons. I did buy buttons at Rhinebeck for it, and I thought they were a good size for the cardigan, and I think they are. They're not too small. But I realized once I got home that my buttonholes are kind of tiny, and I'm not sure, I haven't checked yet, but I'm not sure my buttons are going to make it through these holes. Never simple, it would seem. So yeah, but so just changing the bind off, the Jenny surprisingly stretchy bind off can look a little flary sometimes, but I really don't think it does in this case. It lies nice and flat. So, and it's still got a lot of give. So I'm really happy with that. So bear that in mind if you have a similar problem with a finished object. Okay, Fantasy Knitting, Isolde Teague's Cruden, which is another vest except a colourwork vest knit in Jameson 2-ply, is slowly working its way along. I've actually bought the printed patterns for these, and they're lovely. A little booklet from Isolde, and I have purchased several of them. I thought I'd put them in the shop. I also am entertaining the thought of preparing kits for them. It's a lovely vest with lots of bright, lovely colours, and I'm just trying to work out how I do kits in multi sizes, because then you need lots of different amounts of yarn. So I hope that some of you might be interested in knitting the Cruden. Let me know your thoughts on that. I am slowly working towards that, and I'll probably offer a small offering when that's ready. Rhinebeck! My very good friend Amber came along to Rhinebeck with me, and we rented a house on Verbo. It was very last minute because I wasn't going. As you know, I don't go to Rhinebeck until the last minute. Next year I'm going to plan much better. But anyway, we did wait, and I can offer you it in cream pebble, which